Okay, all right. So let's talk clowns.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if everyone's got an opinion about clowns, right? You either love them or you're kind of creeped out by them.
Totally.
But either way, there's just something about them, that gets under our skin.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're going to do a deep dive into the psychology behind that whole creep factor today.
Okay.
And I think you might be surprised to learn there's some really solid,
Mm-hmm.
like evolutionary and social psych kind of reasons for why they freak us out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
This isn't just random.
there's more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah, exactly. So we're basing our deep dive today on this article from Psychology.Today. It's called The Psychology Behind the Creepy Clown Phenomenon.
Catchy title.
It is, right?
Hmm.
By Dr. Glenn Geher,
Mm-hmm.
published back in 2016.
Okay.
It was during that time when there were all those creepy clown sightings.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All over the U.S. Remember all those stories about, like, clowns in the woods in South Ohioville?
I do, yeah, vaguely.
Or the ones, like, lurking behind a high school on Long Island?
Oh, yeah.
People were freaking out.
It was definitely a moment.
Yeah, it really was.
A cultural moment.
Yeah, for sure. And Dr. Geher makes this interesting point in the article.
Okay.
He says that this so-called evil behavior,
Mm-hmm.
the things that we might think of as evil,
Yeah.
it's not always about somebody actually being a bad person,
Okay.
but it might be about the situation they're in.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
That's a really crucial point.
Yeah.
And it kind of connects to, the work of Philip Zimbardo, the psychologist,
Okay.
who did that famous Stanford prison experiment
Oh, right.
where he,
With the,
put regular college students in.
yeah, in a mock
A
prison.
mock prison, yeah.
Yeah. And didn't that have to be shut down early?
It did, because things
Because it got so...
got so out of control.
Yeah.
The guards, they started behaving
Yeah.
in really abusive ways.
Huh.
And the prisoners became, withdrawn,
Oh, wow.
passive.
That's scary.
It is scary.
Yeah.
But it just shows how powerful these situational factors can be
Yeah.
in shaping our behavior,
Wow.
even like overriding, our usual sense of morality.
So how does that
I-
how does that tie back into clowns being creepy?
Well, this is where the concept of deindividuation comes in.
Okay.
So Dr. Geher explains that when we feel anonymous
Right.
or our identity's kind of hidden,
Okay.
like when we're wearing a mask or in a big crowd,
Yeah.
or even just like, being anonymous online,
Oh, right.
we're more likely
Yes,
to
fair.
act in ways we normally wouldn't.
So like internet trolls.
Exactly. Like those internet trolls
Yeah.
who say just awful things online
Right.
because they think
Right.
they can't be identified.
Right. They're not a person.
Exactly. And think about it from like
Yeah.
an evolutionary perspective.
Oh,
Warriors throughout history,
Mhm.
they used masks
Oh, right.
and costumes
Yeah.
to make themselves less
Right.
individual, less recognizable.
Oh, I never thought about that.
And so that de-individuation, it probably made it
Right.
psychologically easier
Yeah.
to fight and kill.
Wow. So maybe we're kind of hardwired
Right.
to be creeped out by people who are
Yeah.
hiding their identities.
It's possible. It's possible.
In clowns.
Right.
I mean,
Their whole look is about de-individuation.
it's like the makeup, the wig, the costume, the big red nose.
Yeah. The whole thing, it's like
Yeah.
erasing their individual identity.
And you know what else is interesting? Dr. Geher points out that most jobs require us to be highly individuated.
Oh, that's you.
Right.
Yeah.
We wear name tags.
Yeah.
We have titles. We introduce ourselves. We're
Yeah.
constantly reinforcing who we are.
Exactly. Our modern world
As individuals.
places a lot of emphasis on individual identity.
Yeah.
Think about it. Like doctors, teachers, salespeople,
Right.
they all present themselves
Yeah.
as individuals with specific roles.
It's all about, like,
Yeah.
who you are.
And responsibility, yeah.
Right. But clowns are the total opposite.
Right.
They're supposed to be de-individuated.
It's like their job
Yeah. It's like...
is to embody this
Yeah.
larger-than-life persona
Right?
that goes beyond who they are.
Right. So it's like
Yeah.
our brains are getting mixed signals
Right.
because we're taught to
Yeah.
trust and identify with individuals.
Thankfully.
But then here's this figure who is like deliberately obscuring their identity.
Right. And that's,
So it's like no wonder it creeps some people out.
it can be unsettling.
Yeah, it's
It
like
challenges our social norms
it's like they're breaking the rules.
and expectations
Yeah.
in a way that's kind of hard to process.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So going back to those clown sightings from 2016,
Mm-hmm.
maybe some of those folks were just out for a laugh.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe they were trying to be creepy?
some of them,
I
right?
don't know.
Yeah.
But now that we understand a little more about this de-individuation thing,
Yeah, it gives us a
yeah,
new lens to view
a new way to look at
that
it.
whole phenomenon, yeah.
Yeah.
And it helps explain like why clowns in general
Mhm.
evoke such a strong reaction in people.
Right. Because it's not just about the costumes and the makeup.
Exactly, yeah.
It's about these deeper...
It's about the psychological and even evolutionary
Yeah, it's like deep down.
factors that are at play,
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating.
It is, it is.
It really is. Makes
Yeah.
you wonder, like,
Mm.
are there other situations where this idea of de-individuation comes into play, like in our everyday lives?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Do we ever become de-individuated without even realizing it?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
But we'll save that for after a quick break.
Okay. So we've been talking about how hiding our identity or
Mhm.
becoming de-individuated can,
Yeah.
make people act in ways
Yeah.
they normally wouldn't.
Right.
But I'm curious,
Mm.
are there times when de-individuation is actually like a good thing?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not always about
Okay.
slipping into like bad behavior.
Okay.
It's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
Context really matters.
Okay.
Think about like a sporting event,
Oh, yeah.
for example.
Everyone's wearing the same jerseys. They're painting their faces. It's like they all become one giant fan.
Exactly. They're like merging into this collective identity.
Right.
And while there can be instances of like bad behavior,
Right.
among sports fans,
Mm-hmm.
more often than not, this type of de-individuation actually
Yeah.
creates a sense of
Yeah.
camaraderie and belonging.
So instead of bringing out like the worst in us,
Yeah.
like we saw in the prison experiment. Right,
It
exactly.
can actually bring people together.
It can, yeah. It's like everyone is united under this common goal,
Yeah.
focused on cheering for their team.
Right.
And that sense of shared identity
Mm-hmm.
can even lead to positive actions.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Like what?
fans coming together to help someone in need or supporting, charitable causes
Oh, that's a good
and
point.
associated with their team.
Yeah, so it's not just about whether we're de-individuated.
Right.
It's about how that de-individuation plays out
Exactly.
in different situations.
Exactly. Yeah, the social cues around us
Yeah.
really matter.
Okay.
So in a situation where the focus is on like positive collective action,
Mm-hmm.
like a charity event
Right.
or a community celebration,
Right.
de-individuation can be a really powerful force for good.
It makes me think about like those big dance parties
Oh, yeah.
where everyone's just moving together in sync.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
In those moments.
The individual kind of melts away
Yeah.
and there's just this shared energy
Right.
that takes over.
It's almost like we need to redefine de-individuation a little bit,
Yeah.
you know?
It's less about losing ourselves
Right.
and more about like
Yeah.
tapping into a different side of ourselves.
Right. Like the side that
Yeah.
connects with others
Exactly.
and feels part of something bigger.
Yeah, that's a really insightful way to put it.
Yeah.
And it kind of brings us back to those clowns
Right.
because they're definitely tapping into something,
Yeah.
even if it is unsettling to some people.
Right. But if de-individuation isn't always a bad thing,
Right.
then why do clowns still creep us out?
Yeah, good question.
Is it just the makeup and the costumes?
Right.
Or is there something more going on?
It's a combination of factors, really.
Oh, okay.
Remember we talked about how modern society
Mm-hmm.
places a lot of emphasis on individuality.
Right. Right.
Well, clowns completely turn that expectation on its head.
Right. It's like their whole job is to be
Exactly.
de-individuated.
It's like they're these walking contradictions
Yeah.
in a world that's obsessed with personal
Yeah.
branding
Right.
and like
Yeah. Standing.
standing out from the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
And their appearance plays into it too,
Yeah.
the exaggerated features,
Right.
the makeup that hides their true face,
Mm-hmm.
the unpredictable behavior.
Yeah.
It can all be way unsettling.
Especially for children, right?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like a lot of people develop their fear of clowns
Mm-hmm.
when they're young.
Yeah, that's a good point because children,
Yeah.
they're still developing their understanding
Yeah.
of like social norms and cues.
Yeah.
So a clown's appearance and behavior
Right.
can be like overwhelming or even frightening to them
Yeah.
because it doesn't fit into the categories that
Yeah.
they're used to.
Right. So it's like a clown's de-individuation is unsettling
Yeah.
because it's breaking the rules
Exactly.
we've learned
Yeah.
about how people should look and act
Mm.
in social situations.
Yes.
And that can trigger that fear response.
Especially in kids.
Especially in kids.
Yeah. And those early experiences, they can have like a lasting impact.
Right.
Leading to,
a lifelong
aversion to clowns.
Right.
But it's not just about individual psychology either.
Okay.
Clowns also have this complicated cultural history.
Right.
Which influences how we perceive them.
Oh, like how clowns are sometimes portrayed as like scary in movies.
Yeah, movies and TV shows.
Yeah. Right.
So our perceptions of clowns are shaped by a lot of different factors.
It's not just one thing.
Personal experiences, cultural representations, psychological predispositions.
Yeah.
This
it's all mixed up.
Complex interplay of influences.
So it's like our brains are trying to make sense of these figures.
Right.
Who are both familiar and strange.
Exactly. Yeah.
Playful and potentially threatening.
Mm-hmm.
So no wonder they evoke such strong emotion.
It's a fascinating example of how our minds grapple with ambiguity.
Yeah.
And try to categorize the world around us.
Speaking of grappling with ambiguity.
Yeah.
Wasn't there like another famous experiment?
Oh, yeah.
That involved deindividuation?
You're thinking of the Stanford prison experiment, which we touched on earlier.
Right. Philip Zimbardo.
Yeah, Philip Zimbardo was the researcher behind it.
Yeah.
And he wanted to understand how situational factors contribute to what we call evil behavior.
Right. So he had regular college students play the roles of
prisoners and guards.
Prisoners and guards, right?
And things got
pretty out of control.
They got really out of control, yeah. The guards who were given uniforms and mirrored sunglasses to kind of mask their identities became increasingly authoritarian and abusive towards the prisoners.
It's like those sunglasses became like a symbol of de-individuation.
That's a great point.
Yeah, like separating them from their
sense of self.
Yeah. Wow. So de-individuation isn't just about clowns and sports fans.
Yeah.
It can have serious real-world consequences.
Yeah, real-world consequences.
Yeah.
And it's not just limited to these extreme situations. Like the Stanford prison experiment.
Right.
Think about online interactions.
Oh, yeah, the internet is full of anonymous profiles and usernames. It's easy to feel
de-individuated online.
Totally.
Yeah. And that anonymity can lead to all sorts of negative behaviors.
Yeah, like
cyberbullying,
trolling,
yeah.
hate speech.
Right.
It's like the internet has become this greeting ground for de-individuation's dark side.
It's scary to think how easily people can become
detached from their actions?
Their actions, yeah.
When they're hiding behind a screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge.
Yeah.
But it also raises this important question.
Okay.
If we understand the psychological mechanisms behind de-individuation, can we also find ways to counteract its negative effects?
That's a great question. Like, if we know that anonymity and a lack of accountability
can lead to bad behavior.
Yeah. Maybe we can design systems or environments that encourage people to act more responsibly, even when they feel de-individuated.
Exactly. It's about shifting the focus from like individual blame to understanding situational factors that contribute to that negative behavior, and then finding creative ways to change those situations.
So instead of just saying like, don't be a jerk online.
Exactly.
We need to think about how to create a more positive,
and accountable
online culture.
Precisely. Yeah. It's about promoting empathy, encouraging perspective taking, and making people more aware of the consequences
of their actions.
Even
when they feel anonymous.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting point. So it's not about eliminating de-individuation altogether.
Exactly.
Because as we've seen, it can have positive aspects too.
It can.
Right. It's more about understanding how it works. And then figuring out
how to channel it in a more
constructive direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the good, the bad,
That's it.
and the downright creepy aspects of de-individuation.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I'm curious, what are some of your final thoughts on this?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that de-individuation,
Mm-hmm.
it's a natural part of the human experience.
Okay.
It's not something to be feared or condemned, but rather something to be understood and navigated thoughtfully.
That's a really important point. So as we wrap up our deep dive into this fascinating subject, what's like one key takeaway you'd like our listener to remember?
I'd say this: de-individuation.
Okay.
It's a powerful force.
Okay.
And it can be used for both good and evil.
Okay.
It's up to each of us to be aware of its influence and to make conscious choices about how we engage with it in our own lives.
You know, it's kind of funny to think that something like clowns, could lead us to this big discussion about human nature.
But that's the beauty of the deep dives, right? Yeah. We start with one specific thing and we end up exploring these universal themes that connect us all.
Yeah. So as we're wrapping up our exploration of de-individuation, I'm wondering if you have a couple key takeaways.
Yeah, of course. I think most importantly, de-individuation isn't just about bad behavior.
Okay.
It's a natural human thing that can be positive and negative.
Right. We tend to focus on like the negative examples.
Right, the creepy clown.
Yeah, like the creepy clowns or
the Stanford prison experiment.
Stanford prison experiment. But we also talked about how de-individuation can create that sense of belonging and community.
Like with sports fans or those dance parties we talked about.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not about getting rid of de-individuation completely.
Exactly, yeah.
But just understanding
it. Yeah. And navigating it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if we know that de-individuation can sometimes lead us down a, not so great path.
A bad path, yeah.
What can we do to mitigate?
One important step is to promote accountability and transparency.
Okay.
When people feel anonymous, they're more likely to do bad stuff.
So making sure that online platforms have clear guidelines.
Yeah, guidelines, ways to report abuse.
Yeah, okay.
And people understand the consequences of their actions.
Yeah, even in the digital world.
Even in the digital world.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also important to foster empathy and perspective taking.
Right, so encouraging people to think outside of themselves and consider other people's feelings.
Yeah, and it can help break down those psychological barriers that de-individuation creates.
It's about remembering that even when we're part of a group or we feel anonymous, our actions still affect real people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about individual responsibility. Right. We can also design environments and systems that discourage that behavior.
Right. So instead of just focusing on changing individual behavior, we can think about...
we can create spaces that encourage us to be our best selves.
Right. Even when we feel de-individuated.
Even when we feel de-individuated.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's about shifting from blame to understanding.
Right.
And then using that understanding to create a more positive and ethical world.
This has been a really insightful deep dive.
It has been, yeah.
I feel like I understand why clowns creep me out now.
Yeah, me too.
But also just
human behavior.
And human behavior in general.
Yeah, it's amazing how a simple question can lead to such a fascinating
Yeah, that's the power of curiosity, right?
It is, yeah.
It lets us look beyond the surface.
Yeah.
And grapple with those big questions.
The big questions, the ones that matter.
Exactly.
Yeah, and hopefully this deep dive has sparked some curiosity in our listeners, too.
Yeah.
Maybe it made them think twice about the times they feel de-individuated.
Right.
Or ways they can promote a more positive culture for their communities.
That's a great point. So to our listener, as you're going about your day, maybe you'll notice those moments where de-individuation is happening.
Yeah, at a concert.
At a concert, in a meeting.
In a meeting, scrolling through social media.
Right, and maybe this new awareness will help you navigate those situations a little bit better.
That's a great thought to leave our listeners with.
Yeah, the more we understand about ourselves and why we do the things we do.
And the forces that shape our behavior.
The better we can,
the better equipped we are.
Make the world a better place.
To create a world where we can all thrive. As individuals and as part of a community.
Beautifully put.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, that wraps up this deep dive.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And until next time, keep exploring.